My name is Zariah Monroe. I'm 50 years old, born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I've spent most of my life teaching literature at a local high school, finding comfort in words when the world outside felt too heavy. For 25 years, I was the wife of Malik Monroe, a man whose presence filled every corner of my life with music, laughter, and sometimes silence that spoke louder than words. 2 months ago, silence became permanent. Malik died suddenly from heart failure, leaving me stranded in a storm I couldn't name. Grief is one thing, but grief tangled with secrets. It burns differently. The day after his funeral, while family and neighbors still crowded my living room with casseroles and condolences, I received a call from Mr. Green, Malik's longtime lawyer. His tone was calm, but his words cut sharper than the winter wind slicing across Lake Michigan. Zariah, Malik left something behind for you, something you need to see immediately. When I arrived at his office, dressed in black and trembling, Mr. Green slid a small velvet box across the desk. Inside was an old brass key, heavy as a stone, and an envelope sealed with Malik's handwriting. My heart pounded so hard it felt like the room itself could hear it. The letter inside was brief, almost cruel in its simplicity. Zariah, if you're holding this, it means I'm gone. Take the key. Go to the estate. The truth is waiting for you there. In that moment, I realized grief was no longer my only companion. Mystery had just joined the table. I must have read Malik's letter a dozen times that night, my hands trembling every time my eyes landed on the words, "The truth is waiting for you there." What truth? Malik was steady, predictable, a man who rarely strayed from routine. He left at 8 every morning with his coffee in a thermos, came home at 6 to the smell of my cooking, and spent Sundays humming Coltrane records while balancing bills at the kitchen table. He wasn't the type to hide things, or so I thought. The next morning, I went back to Mr. Green's office for answers. His mahogany-paneled room smelled faintly of old cigars and polished wood, like a place built to hold secrets. He adjusted his glasses, then slid a thick folder across the desk. "Your husband purchased a property in New Orleans 3 years ago," he said evenly. "He left instructions that you were only to be informed after his passing." New Orleans? The word stuck in my throat. I had never once heard Malik mention owning land outside Chicago. "It's called Bayou Crescent Estate," Mr. Green continued. "The deed is now in your name. All taxes are prepaid for 5 years. I stared at the folder, unable to touch it. Malik and I lived comfortably, but never extravagantly. A secret estate in one of the most historic cities in America. How could he afford it? Why keep it hidden from me? Mr. Green's voice dropped lower. "Mrs. Monroe, there's something else. The property has become extremely valuable, and," he hesitated, "his brothers have already filed a challenge to the will, claiming Malik was not of sound mind when he repurchased the estate." My chest tightened. Malik's brothers had always been distant shadows in our marriage. Now, it seemed, they were stepping into the light, with claims that could strip me of everything. I left Mr. Green's office with the brass key burning a hole in my pocket, and the words, "not of sound mind," echoing in my head. The phrase made my blood boil. Malik was many things. Stubborn, private, sometimes too proud, but never confused, never incompetent. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the house too quiet without his saxophone records filling the air. My daughter Naomi had already returned to Atlanta for work, leaving me with my grief and that damn folder. I spread the documents out under the yellow glow of the overhead lamp. Deeds, bank receipts, letters of transfer, all legitimate, all signed in Malik's steady handwriting. This was no delusion. He knew exactly what he was doing. I could almost hear his voice. "Zariah, don't let them twist my story." By morning, my decision was made. I booked a one-way ticket to New Orleans, the city where jazz dripped from the streets, and history clung to every wrought-iron balcony. It felt almost poetic. Malik sending me back to the birthplace of the very music that had always been his lifeline. 2 days later, I found myself staring out the window of a cab as it rolled past moss-draped oaks and weathered mansions. My stomach churned with equal parts dread and anticipation. When the cab finally slowed before towering gates marked Bayou Crescent Estate, I drew a sharp breath. This wasn't some forgotten relic. Beyond the gates stretched land that looked alive, cared for, transformed. I tightened my grip on the key in my hand. Whatever Malik had hidden here, it was about to change everything. The iron gates creaked open with a weight that felt older than time. My cab driver muttered something about the place, giving him chills, before driving off, leaving me alone on the gravel driveway. The estate rose before me, an imposing 3-story house, its white columns gleaming against the Louisiana sun, its windows watching me like unblinking eyes. For a moment, I froze. I half expected Malik to step onto the porch, that easy grin on his face, his shoulders swaying like he'd just been caught improvising on his horn. But the house stayed silent, waiting. I slipped the brass key into the lock. It turned smoothly, almost too smoothly, as if Malik had oiled it himself just yesterday. The door swung wide, and I stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something sweeter. Jasmine, maybe. My eyes widened as I took in the foyer. This wasn't a neglected property. It was curated, loved, restored. Polished floors reflected light from a crystal chandelier. Paintings lined the walls, not of ancestors or landscapes, but of music. Saxophones, trumpets, and black musicians caught mid-note, their faces alive with joy and struggle. I pressed a hand to my chest. Malik knew me better than anyone, but this was him. His world, his voice captured in brushstrokes and photographs. Then I saw it. A desk near the bay window, a sleek laptop sitting closed with a single red rose resting on top. My throat tightened. Malik had always hated computers. He barely knew how to send an email. If he'd left this for me, it wasn't casual. It was deliberate. I reached for the laptop, my hands trembling. Whatever was on it, I knew one thing. Malik hadn't just left me in a state. He had left me a story he wanted me to finish. The laptop was silver, polished, untouched by dust, as if someone had wiped it clean that very morning. My fingers hovered above the lid, hesitant. Malik had always been a man of pen and paper, sticky notes cluttering the refrigerator, old journals filled with sketches of jazz arrangements he never got around to playing. A laptop didn't fit him. And yet, here it was, waiting for me. When I finally lifted the lid, the screen glowed to life. A password prompt appeared, and I felt a sharp pang of dread. Then I remembered Malik's letter. The truth is waiting for you there. Slowly, I typed in the date of our wedding anniversary, followed by my maiden name. The screen unlocked immediately. My chest tightened. He knew I would remember. The desktop had only one folder, labeled in bold letters. For Zariah. My hand shook as I clicked. Inside were hundreds of video files, each stamped with a date, each arranged in perfect order. The first file bore the date of his funeral, as though Malik had anticipated the exact day I would arrive here. I clicked. The screen filled with his face, not the tired, pale version I remembered from his final months, but Malik in his prime. Shoulders strong, eyes bright, that crooked smile that used to undo me in seconds. He was alive, laughing softly as though he'd just stepped out of the kitchen to surprise me. Zariah. His voice filled the room, warm and steady. If you're watching this, then I'm gone. But I didn't want to leave you in silence. I made these for you. A year of me. One video for every day, so you'd never have to walk this grief alone. Tears blurred my vision. He leaned closer to the camera, his expression turning serious. I know you've got questions about this place, about why I bought back Bayou Crescent when I swore I'd never set foot here again. I'll explain it all, but first, you need to know this. My brothers will come for it. They already tried once. They'll claim I wasn't in my right mind, that I didn't know what I was signing. They'll twist the truth. Don't let them. The screen froze on his smile, leaving me breathless. Malik had built me more than an estate. He had built me a map, and this was only the beginning. I didn't have long to sit with Malik's words. The next morning, I woke to the sound of tires crunching over gravel. Through the tall front windows, I saw a black SUV roll up the driveway, sunlight glinting off its tinted glass. My stomach sank. 3 men stepped out, their resemblance to Malik unmistakable. Same sharp jawlines, same broad shoulders, but their expressions carried none of his warmth. Darius, the oldest, carried himself like a man used to giving orders. Elias, the middle brother, slick in his tailored suit, already had a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. And Caleb, the youngest, hung back, eyes darting with the quiet intensity of someone who preferred to watch before striking. They walked up the steps like they owned the place. A knock rattled the door, firm, demanding. "Mrs. Monroe," a voice called, low and steady. "We know you're in there. We should talk." I froze. Malik's warning replayed in my head. They'll twist the truth. I didn't open the door, not yet. Instead, I moved toward the side window and peeked out. Elias was already unfolding documents, holding them up as if the papers themselves could tear through wood and glass. "Court filings," he said loudly, his voice dripping with authority. "Signed affidavits from 2 doctors stating Malik wasn't of sound mind when he bought this estate. You can't hold on to something that was never truly his." My hands curled into fists. Malik had been private, stubborn, but never unstable. They knocked again, harder this time. Caleb's voice carried next, softer but sharper. "Zariah, you'll make this easier if you just open the door. Fighting us will only drag his name through the mud." That was when I noticed it, my reflection in the glass. I didn't look like the grieving widow they expected. My shoulders were squared, my jaw set. Malik hadn't built Bayou Crescent for me to hand it over at the first knock. I turned away from the window and headed for the desk. The laptop was still waiting, Malik's frozen smile on the screen. If his brothers wanted a fight, I'd need every weapon he left me. And something in my gut told me the videos were just the beginning. I shut out the sound of their fists pounding on the door and sat back at the desk. My pulse was racing, but Malik's face was still frozen on the screen, calm and steady, as if daring me to keep going. I clicked the next video. "Zariah," he said, voice lower now, more deliberate. "If my brothers have found you, they'll come armed with papers, experts, maybe even doctors swearing I wasn't in my right mind. They'll try to paint me as confused, unstable. But you know me. You lived beside me. I wasn't confused. I was careful." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away. Malik leaned closer to the camera, his eyes sharp. "In the bottom drawer of this desk, you'll find a blue binder. Inside are notarized statements from contractors, bank officials, even my primary physician, all confirming my health and mental clarity when I purchased Bayou Crescent. I didn't leave this estate to chance. I left it to you." I dropped to my knees and yanked the drawer open. The binder was there, thick and heavy. My fingers flipped through page after page of documents, each stamped, signed, and dated. Malik hadn't just bought this estate. He had fortified it like a fortress, but then his tone shifted, softer, almost hesitant. "There's something else," he continued. "You'll hear stories, maybe even from people who think they know the truth about our family. My brothers believe Bayou Crescent belongs to them because it was our father's legacy. What they won't tell you is how that legacy nearly destroyed me. The lies, the debts, the abuse. I rebuilt this place, Zariah. Not for them, for you." I sat back, clutching the binder, my hands shaking. Outside, the pounding on the door had stopped. Through the window, I saw Darius pacing by the SUV, Elias on the phone, Caleb staring at the house, like he could see straight through me. I pressed pause on the video, heart hammering. Malik had armed me with the truth, but truth alone wouldn't win a war. For the first time since he died, I felt a spark of something that wasn't grief. It was resolve. The binder was heavy in my lap, but something told me Malik hadn't meant for me to fight this battle alone. He always thought 3 moves ahead, like a chess player who already knew how the game would end. I was still flipping through affidavits when the knock on the door came again. Not harsh this time, but gentle. I hesitated, then cracked it open just enough to see a woman standing there. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with silver-streaked braids pulled neatly under a scarf. Her eyes, though, were sharp and knowing. "You must be Zariah," she said softly. "I'm Claudine Baptiste. I was Malik's friend a long time before you knew him." The name stirred something faint in my memory. Malik had mentioned a Claudine once or twice, back when we were still young, but never in detail. "I don't mean to intrude," she continued, glancing over her shoulder where the brothers lingered near their SUV. "But you'll need me, especially when this reaches court." I let her in, suspicion warring with curiosity. She moved through the foyer like she'd been here before, pausing at the paintings, the polished wood, the chandelier Malik had chosen. A wistful smile crossed her face. "Malik told me everything," she said finally, "about the estate, about his father, about how his brothers would try to claim he wasn't of sound mind. He asked me to keep a record of his clarity, in case it ever came to this." My breath caught. A record? Claudine pulled a small leather-bound journal from her purse, its pages thick with neat handwriting. Every conversation, every decision we discussed about Bayou Crescent. He was deliberate, Zariah. Focused. More clear-headed than I'd seen him in years. I reached out, my fingers brushing the journal's cover. Proof. Not just legal affidavits, but the testimony of someone who had been there, who had witnessed his mind at work. Outside, I could hear Elias's voice rising, sharp and impatient on the phone. The brothers were gathering their weapons. But inside, Claudine's presence felt like Malik had sent me an ally from beyond the grave. For the first time, I believed we had a chance. Walking into the federal courthouse in downtown Chicago was like stepping into a different world. The ceilings soared high, marble floors echoing every footstep, and the air carried that sharp chill of authority, the kind that could slice through even the strongest resolve. I clutched my purse a little tighter, Malik's blue binder inside, the brass key pressed against my palm like a talisman. The Monroe brothers were already there, sitting in a neat row at the plaintiff's table. Darius leaned back, arms folded across his chest, eyes fixed on me with a quiet challenge. Elias had that smug, polished look, whispering into his attorney's ear while flipping through his portfolio. Caleb, the youngest, kept his gaze low, but every so often flicked a glance at me. Sharp, unreadable. They looked like predators circling, waiting for blood. My attorney, Mr. Green, motioned me toward our table. "Stay calm," he murmured. "They'll come hard at first, but we've got more than they expect." I nodded, though my pulse hammered so loudly it drowned out his words. I glanced at the gallery behind us, and there, 2 rows back, I saw Claudine Baptiste. She sat upright, hands folded neatly in her lap, silver braids catching the light. She gave me a small nod, steady, grounding. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The weight of the room shifted. The case was called Monroe Brothers versus Zariah Monroe. Just hearing my name paired against theirs sent a chill down my spine. The brothers' attorney launched first, painting a picture of Malik as a man slipping into dementia, incapable of making rational decisions. They waved medical charts, cited doctor's notes, even referenced episodes of confusion, supposedly witnessed by family. I wanted to scream, to shout, that it was all lies, but Mr. Green touched my arm, signaling patience. This was part of their show. As their words filled the chamber, I thought of Malik's first video. His eyes bright, his voice steady. They'll twist the truth. He had been right about everything. When it was our turn, Mr. Green stood calmly, holding up the blue binder. "Your Honor," he began, "we will show not only that Malik Monroe was fully competent when he purchased Bayou Crescent Estate, but that he left behind indisputable evidence of his clarity, intent, and purpose." My hands shook under the table, but a fire burned inside me. I wasn't just Malik's widow anymore. I was his voice, and I was ready to be heard. When the judge finally nodded for our side to respond, my breath caught in my throat. Mr. Green rose with the blue binder in hand, his voice calm but steady. "Your Honor," he began, "the plaintiffs claim that Mr. Monroe lacked clarity of mind. But this binder contains signed statements from contractors, bank officials, and Malik's own physician, all notarized, confirming his sound judgment during the very period in question." He opened the binder and began reading. The names were credible, the signatures undeniable. Each page landed like a hammer on the brothers' carefully crafted image of Malik as a confused man. Darius shifted in his chair, jaw tightening. Elias leaned over to whisper furiously to their lawyer. Caleb just stared at the table, a muscle twitching in his cheek. But Mr. Green wasn't done. He placed the binder on the evidence table, then gestured toward me. My heart pounded as the clerk wheeled in a small monitor. "Mrs. Monroe," he said gently, "would you identify this file?" I swallowed hard, then nodded. "It's a video my husband recorded for me. He made hundreds in the last year of his life." The screen flickered to life. There was Malik, sitting at his desk in this very estate, shoulders square, eyes bright. "Zariah," his voice carried through the courtroom, clear and strong. "If you're seeing this, it means my brothers are already circling. Let them. They'll say I was confused. But I know exactly what I was doing. Bayou Crescent is ours. It belongs to you, not to them." A hush fell over the courtroom. Even the judge leaned forward, watching Malik speak as though he'd been resurrected. When the video ended, silence lingered. Mr. Green turned back toward the bench. "Your Honor, I submit that a man capable of documenting his intentions so plainly and over such an extended period was not only of sound mind, but deliberate in every choice he made." The judge's expression remained unreadable, but I saw something shift in the gallery. Claudine gave me the slightest smile, as if to say, "We're not finished yet." And deep inside, for the first time since Malik's death, I felt the balance of power begin to tilt. Just when I thought we had shown enough to hold our ground, Mr. Green straightened his tie and said, "Your Honor, the defense would like to call a witness." My stomach fluttered. I hadn't been told this part. The courtroom doors opened, and Claudine Baptiste stepped forward. Heads turned as she walked with a quiet grace, silver braids gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The Monroe brothers stiffened immediately. Elias muttered something sharp under his breath. Darius's jaw clenched so hard, I thought it might crack. She took the stand, raised her right hand, swore her oath. Then she settled, hands folded, eyes steady. "Ms. Baptiste," Mr. Green began, "would you please explain to the court how you knew the late Mr. Malik Monroe?" Her voice was calm, low but clear. "I met Malik when we were both teenagers in New Orleans. We stayed friends our entire lives. Even when he moved to Chicago, he called me, wrote me, asked for advice, especially when he was thinking of buying back Bayou Crescent." That name hung in the air. And what was the state of his mind during those conversations? Green pressed. Claudine reached into her bag and pulled out a small leather journal. "I kept records. Malik wanted me to. Every detail of his plans, dates, financial steps, contractors he trusted. He wanted proof he was deliberate, in case anyone ever doubted him." The opposing attorney shot up. "Objection, hearsay." But the judge leaned forward. "Overruled. Continue." Claudine flipped the journal open, reading lines written in her neat hand. "On March 12th, he told me, 'Claudine, this estate is going to be my redemption, my gift to Zariah. I need it to be perfect, and I need to be clear.'" Her words landed heavy. She then held up a small recorder, old and worn, and I also have his voice. The clerk pressed play. Malik's tone filled the courtroom, steady and sharp as I remembered. "I know my brothers will fight me, but my mind is sharp, Claudine. Don't let them call me crazy." Silence. Even the judge leaned back, lips pressed tight. I looked at the brothers. Darius was stone-faced, Elias pale, Caleb tapping his fingers furiously on the table. And for the first time in that cold marble room, I saw fear in their eyes. The courtroom felt frozen after Claudine's testimony, like the very walls had absorbed her words. I sat taller, hope sparking in my chest for the first time since this battle began. But the Monroe brothers weren't finished. Not by a long shot. Their attorney rose swiftly, voice sharp enough to slice through the silence. Your Honor, while the defense has offered journals and recordings, the plaintiffs bring forward medical proof. Hard, scientific evidence. Not memories, not stories. Elias leaned back smugly, and Darius slid a thick envelope across to the clerk. The attorney withdrew several stapled reports. These are evaluations from Dr. Harold Mitchell, Malik's longtime physician, confirming episodes of confusion, lapses in memory, and impaired judgment during the very months he signed the estate deed. He held up one page for the judge to see. My stomach twisted. At the top, Malik's name. Underneath, cognitive decline, consistent with early dementia, whispers rippled through the courtroom. The lawyer turned, pacing like a predator. We don't deny Mr. Monroe loved his wife. We don't deny he dreamed of leaving her something. But dreams don't change facts. And the fact is, he wasn't competent. This purchase was invalid, and Bayou Crescent must return to its rightful heirs. I felt heat rise to my face. Malik's name, dragged through the mud. His pride, his clarity, questioned in front of strangers. Caleb, the youngest, suddenly spoke up, breaking his silence. His voice was smooth, but poisonous. Zariah, if you love Malik the way you claim, don't tarnish his memory with this circus. He was sick. You know he was sick. Let us put this place back in the family where it belongs. I almost shot to my feet, but Mr. Green's hand pressed me back into my chair. He whispered, Patience. They've played their best card. But patience was hard when every fiber of me wanted to scream. I clenched my fists, staring at those forged words on paper, fighting the urge to cry. Then I felt Claudine's gaze from across the room, calm, steady, unshaken. She mouthed 2 words to me. Trust Malik. And I realized, if Malik had prepared me this far, he had more in store. We just had to find it. The air inside the courtroom grew heavy after their so-called medical evidence was read aloud. I could feel the weight of every whisper behind me, strangers trading glances, as if Malik's mind had already been condemned. My hands shook under the table, but I pressed them flat against my skirt, forcing myself to breathe. Mr. Green rose slowly, deliberate as always, and carried the blue binder back to the podium. His voice was calm, but I caught the steel underneath. Your Honor, he said, the plaintiff's present reports dated after Malik Monroe's hospital admission, when his health was failing. But competence isn't measured in a deathbed moment. It's measured when the decisions are made. And on the very days he purchased Bayou Crescent, Malik Monroe documented his clarity in ways far stronger than a single line of medical jargon. He opened the binder, sliding several notarized affidavits across to the clerk. This is testimony from Dr. Jameson, Malik's actual attending physician during the purchase period, not the retired family doctor the plaintiffs dragged in. Here, Dr. Jameson states explicitly that Mr. Monroe was alert, oriented, and fully capable of entering into legal contracts. The judge examined the pages, eyes narrowing. Mr. Green continued, his tone steady. And if that isn't enough, we also have Malik himself. The monitor lit up again. Another video file played, time-stamped just weeks before the purchase. Malik appeared on screen, sitting at his desk, eyes sharp as ever. He leaned forward. For the record, I am of sound mind. I know what I'm doing. Bayou Crescent is my choice, my responsibility. My brothers will say I'm confused. I am not. This is proof. His voice filled the chamber, echoing off marble and wood. My throat tightened, but this time it wasn't grief. It was vindication. When the screen went black, the silence was deafening. Even the gallery stopped whispering. I glanced at the brothers. Darius's expression had cracked. Elias was scribbling furiously at his notes, and Caleb's gaze darted toward the floor. Mr. Green turned back to the bench. Your Honor, Malik Monroe left his truth behind, and today, his truth speaks louder than forged reports and self-serving claims. I sat straighter, shoulders squared. Malik had armed me with his voice, and in that moment, I knew. We were far from finished. The silence didn't last long. Darius shot to his feet, voice booming like a preacher at a tent revival. This is manipulation, he thundered, pointing straight at me. That video could have been staged, edited, scripted by her. His finger shook in my direction, his face dark with fury. She's the one who stands to gain everything. Don't be fooled by crocodile tears and high school teacher charm. She and her lawyer cooked this up. Gasps rippled through the gallery. My stomach tightened, but I forced myself to stay still, chin high. Alan, the smooth talker of the bunch, was quick to pile on. He slid a manila folder toward the clerk with a smug tilt of his head. For the record, Your Honor, here are bank transfers and suspicious withdrawals from Mr. Monroe's accounts during the renovation period. Funds, we believe, were misappropriated by Mrs. Zariah Monroe herself. She cloaked it as estate improvement, but the timing and the amounts, well, you can see for yourself. The judge's brow furrowed, flipping through the paperwork. I felt the eyes of half the courtroom burning into my back, whispers swelling like a tide. Then Elias, the quiet one, finally spoke, his words like poisoned honey. And as for this so-called witness, he nodded toward Claudine, sitting tall in the gallery. Let the court remember she's no impartial saint. She's Malik's longtime companion. Everyone in the neighborhood knew it. She had reason to protect him, and now she has reason to protect Zariah. Sentiment disguised as testimony is still bias. Claudine stiffened but didn't flinch, her gaze locked on the bench. I clenched my fists in my lap, heat flooding my cheeks. They were trying to drag me through the mud, paint me as a thief, and Claudine as some secret lover conspiring with me. Their strategy was clear. If they couldn't kill Malik's credibility, they'd bury mine. Mr. Green rose smoothly, calm as a man pouring cool water over fire. Objections, Your Honor. These are wild accusations without substantiated proof. Bank statements taken out of context don't establish theft, and character assassination of a witness before she's even testified. That is desperation, not defense. But even as his words steadied the air, I could feel the shift. The brothers had landed their blow, planting seeds of doubt. And I knew, in this battle, perception mattered as much as truth. The courtroom doors might as well have slammed shut behind me, because for a moment I felt caged in. Their accusations hung heavy, souring the air. My pulse hammered, but before I could speak, Claudine rose from her seat in the gallery. She walked with the slow grace of someone who had nothing to prove, just truth to deliver. Her Sunday hat sat firm, her posture unyielding. When she reached the stand, she looked every bit the storm I knew she could be. Raise your right hand, the bailiff said. She did, steady as stone. Once sworn in, Claudine folded her hands on the railing and fixed the judge with a gaze sharp enough to cut glass. "My name is Claudine Harris," she began, voice smooth but ringing across the chamber. "I was Malik Monroe's closest friend for over 30 years, not his companion, not his mistress, his confidant. He trusted me when his own brothers wouldn't even look him in the eye." Elias shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. She continued, each word deliberate. "These men claim Malik was confused, incompetent. I sat with him the very week he signed those papers. He asked me to review the deed myself because he wanted to be sure no loopholes existed that could let them take Bayou Crescent from Zariah. He was sharp, determined, and he knew exactly what he was doing." She reached into her purse and pulled out a sealed envelope. My heart skipped. "This," she said, handing it to the clerk, "is a notarized statement Malik asked me to keep safe. Dated the day before he finalized the purchase, his handwriting, his signature, his words. In it, he names his reasons clearly: to restore the land, to leave it to his wife, and to ensure his brothers, these men, could never twist his legacy for greed." Gasps filled the courtroom again. The judge examined the paper, eyes narrowing, lips pressed tight. He gave a curt nod. Claudine turned her gaze to the brothers, her voice lowering but cutting deeper. "You men tormented him as a boy. You mocked him as a man. And when he finally rose above it all, you came here to drag his widow through the dirt. Well, Malik planned for that too. He told me once, 'Claudine, when they come for Zariah, you make sure the truth stands taller than their lies.' And here I am." Silence fell. No one moved. In that silence, I felt Malik's presence wrap around me like armor. For the first time since the trial began, I knew the tide had turned. The courtroom was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the old ceiling fan above us. Every pair of eyes locked on Judge Reynolds as he adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. His gavel rested untouched, but the weight of his silence pressed heavier than any blow. The brothers shifted in their seats, restless. Darius tapped his foot against the wooden floor. Elias scribbled notes he wouldn't dare read aloud, and Caleb just stared at the polished surface of the table, like it might open up and swallow him whole. Finally, the judge cleared his throat. "I've heard enough for today," he said, voice even, but carrying a finality that made my heart clench. The plaintiffs presented medical documents suggesting incompetence, but those documents are weakened by both timeline and testimony. On the other side, the defense has produced direct evidence in the form of video, affidavits, and now, this notarized letter. Each speaks to Mr. Monroe's state of mind at the critical moment. He paused, scanning the room. This court will not be rushed into judgment by noise or accusation. What matters here is intent. Did Malik Monroe intend for Bayou Crescent to belong to his wife? Every piece of credible evidence I've seen says yes. The brothers erupted, murmurs, protests, half-formed objections tumbling over one another. Darius nearly rose again, but Judge Reynolds slammed the gavel once, sharp and commanding. "Order! If you cannot contain yourselves, I'll have you removed." Silence fell again, but the heat of their rage lingered. The judge leaned back, folding his hands. "Here's my ruling. Until final judgment, Bayou Crescent remains in Mrs. Monroe's possession. The plaintiff's claim of incompetence will be further investigated, but at present, the evidence leans heavily in the defense's favor." My breath caught. It wasn't the full victory, Not yet. But it was protection. A shield between me and their claws. The judge continued, his tone hardening, and let me be clear. Any further attempts to harass, intimidate, or slander Mrs. Monroe or her witnesses will weigh against you in this court. Am I understood? Darius muttered something under his breath, but Elias elbowed him into silence. The gavel struck again. Court adjourned. As people began to stir, whispers rushing back like a wave, I sat frozen in my chair. Relief mingled with exhaustion, and behind it all, a fierce, unyielding flame Malik's truth had held. For now. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a war I was finally ready to fight. When I pulled into the driveway that evening, the last thing I expected was to see Amara's car already parked outside Bayou Crescent. My heart leapt, part joy, part dread. She hadn't called, hadn't warned me. That usually meant she was carrying more questions than answers. Inside, she was waiting in the great room, her coat still on, her eyes sharp with that same Monroe fire her father used to carry when he thought someone was lying to him. "Mom," she said flatly, arms crossed. "We need to talk." I braced myself. All right. Sit with me. She didn't. She stood rooted to the floor. Uncle Darius called. He told me you and Dad's friends staged that whole testimony today. He said Dad wasn't thinking straight those last years, that you pressured him into putting everything in your name. Her voice cracked but didn't soften. He said, the money changes people, and I don't even recognize you anymore. The words hit harder than any accusation in court. Coming from them, it was strategy. From her, it was heartbreak. I rose slowly, meeting her eyes. "Amara, your uncles are playing the same game they've always played, twisting truth, feeding doubt. I know you're hurting, baby, but you have to understand. They don't want family. They want control." She shook her head, tears welling. Then why didn't Dad tell me? Why didn't he tell us about Bayou Crescent, about the videos, about any of it? He left us in the dark, and now I don't know who to believe. Her voice broke, and for a second I saw not the grown woman, but the little girl who used to crawl into my lap after nightmares. My throat tightened. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Because he thought he was protecting you, protecting both of us. And maybe he was wrong not to share sooner. But his love for you, Amara, that was never in question. If you watch the videos with me, you'll see it. Not just in his words, but in his eyes. She faltered, her arms loosening from their defensive cross. Her breath shuddered, a war still raging inside her. "Please," I whispered, touching her hand gently. "Don't let them steal you from me the way they tried to steal this land. We've already lost your father. Let's not lose each other, too." For the first time since she walked in, her eyes softened, but her silence told me the battle for her trust was far from over. The night after court, the house felt too big, too quiet. Amara had left without giving me an answer, her silence lingering louder than words. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair where Malik used to drink his late-night coffee, when headlights cut across the window. A knock followed. Mr. Green stepped in first, coat still dusted with city grit, Claudine behind him carrying her worn leather bag. They didn't bother with small talk. We all knew why they were here. "We need to get ahead of them," Green said, setting down a stack of files. The brothers aren't going to retreat. They'll double down. Next round, they'll push this narrative of incompetence even harder. Claudine slid into a chair, her eyes steady. And they'll keep trying to poison Amara against you. I've known those men all my life. They never fight fair. I rubbed my temples, exhaustion clawing at me. So what do? We've shown Malik's videos, his statements, your testimony. They still come back swinging. That's because we've been playing defense, Green said, tapping the files. Now it's time to go on offense. He opened the folder, revealing financial records, old newspaper clippings, and photocopies of court documents. Your husband didn't just renovate Bayou Crescent. He collected receipts, decades of them, embezzlement schemes, shady land deals, fraud buried under shell companies. He built a war chest of evidence. Claudine nodded. He showed me some of it once, told me he was saving it in case they ever tried to destroy you after he was gone. I leaned forward, scanning the papers, numbers, signatures, shell corporations I didn't recognize. But one thing was clear. The trail led straight back to Darius, Elias, and Caleb. What you're saying is... Green cut me off with a rare, thin smile. What I'm saying is that when we walk back into that courtroom, we won't just defend Malik's sanity. We'll put theirs on trial, their greed, their crimes, their pattern of deception. Claudine's hand closed over mine, warm and firm. Baby girl, Malik didn't just leave you land. He left you a sword, and it's time you swing it. I exhaled slowly, the weight in my chest easing, replaced by something sharper. Resolve. If they wanted a war, then Malik had already armed me for the battlefield. And this time, I was done playing defense. It was close to midnight when I finally picked up the phone. My hands hovered over the screen longer than I'd like to admit. Reaching out to Amara after the way she'd looked at me earlier, like I was a stranger, felt like stepping onto a tightrope without a net. But if I didn't, the brothers would win her heart before I even had a chance to fight. She answered on the second ring, her voice groggy but guarded. Mom, it's late. I know, baby, but this can't wait. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I need you to come to Bayou Crescent tomorrow evening. Just you. No uncles, no lawyers. There's something you need to see. A long silence stretched across the line. I could picture her sitting cross-legged on her apartment couch, chewing at her bottom lip like she always did when torn. They already showed me things, she said finally, her tone sharp. Bank statements, reports. They say you and Claudine are twisting the story to lock them out. Why should I believe your version over theirs? The question cut deep, but I steadied myself. Because Malik left the truth behind, Amara. He left it for us, especially for you. I'm not asking you to believe me blindly. I'm asking you to look at the evidence with your own eyes. See what your father documented. Then decide for yourself who's twisting the story. Her breath crackled through the receiver, uneven. And what if I don't like what I see? Then at least you'll know, I said softly. And you won't have to live with their half-truths and my silence fighting inside you. For the first time, her voice wavered. Did he ever say anything to me in those videos? Not to you, but to me. My throat tightened. Yes, he made messages just for you. He talked about your stubbornness, your brilliance, how you reminded him of himself when he was young. He wanted you to understand the choices he made, even if they hurt. The silence this time felt different, less like a wall, more like a door half open. "Tomorrow night," she whispered, "I'll come. But if this is some performance, Mom, I'll know." I closed my eyes, relief washing over me. "It's not a performance, Amara. It's your father's truth. And it's waiting for you." When the line went dead, I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. The battlefield wasn't just in the courtroom. It was here, in the fragile space between mother and daughter. And tomorrow, everything could change. The next morning, I walked into the cafe on Peachtree Street and felt my chest tighten. Jenna was already there, sitting at a corner table, smiling, laughing even, with Darius and Elias Monroe. My daughter, my own blood, looking at those men like family. "Mom," she said brightly when I approached, "Uncle Darius was just telling me stories about Dad's childhood. Things you never shared." "Uncle." The word cut like glass. I sat down slowly, eyes locked on Darius. He gave me that politician's smile, the kind that hides knives. "Catherine." He always refused to say my name right. "We only want to honor Malik's wishes. The farm belongs to the family. We're prepared to make a generous settlement, 1/3 to you, 1/3 to Jenna, 1/3 to us. Everyone wins." Jenna turned to me, eager. "It makes sense, Mom. Why fight? We could sell Bayou Crescent, walk away with millions, and Dad's family stays intact." I forced my voice to stay calm. "Your father didn't leave the farm to them. He left it to us. He had reasons, Jenna." Elias leaned forward, sliding a leather folder across the table. Or maybe he was confused. These evaluations suggest his judgment was compromised. "A court will see it our way." I looked at my daughter then, her hopeful eyes, her need to hold on to anything that felt like connection to Malik. They were using her grief as a weapon. I pushed the folder back across the table. "You'll get nothing from me. And Jenna, don't sign a single piece of paper. Not today. Not ever." The brothers' smiles faltered, just slightly, and I knew. This battle was about to get uglier. The final hearing drew a crowd bigger than I'd ever seen. Reporters lined the courthouse steps, cameras flashing as though Malik himself had risen from the grave to stand trial. Inside, the gallery was packed. Neighbors, church members, even strangers who'd heard whispers of a family tearing itself apart over land and legacy. I walked through the aisle with Amara at my side, her hand brushing mine for strength. Claudine followed close behind, her presence as steady as a lighthouse. Mr. Green carried our files, calm as always, though I caught the flicker of fire in his eyes. Today wasn't just about survival. It was about finishing this fight. At the plaintiff's table, the Monroe brothers looked sharper than ever. Darius wore a tailored navy suit, his tie the color of blood. Elias smirked at the cameras, basking in the performance, while Caleb sat still, his silence more menacing than noise. Their attorney, tall and slick, stacked folders like ammunition, ready to fire. When the judge entered, the room shifted to absolute silence. The brothers' lawyer wasted no time. "Your Honor, before you today is irrefutable evidence that Malik Monroe was unfit to execute the deed in question. We submit sworn testimony from medical experts, financial auditors, and neighbors who witnessed erratic behavior. We will show this estate was not the act of a sound man, but the manipulation of a grieving wife and her accomplice." He gestured toward me and Claudine. his tone dripping with disdain. My jaw tightened, but I stayed still. Amara's fingers gripped mine under the table. The lawyer pressed on, parading witnesses. An old neighbor claiming Malik once forgot his own street name. A nurse who said he seemed confused during a hospital stay. A supposed financial auditor pointing to suspicious withdrawals. Each story chipped away, designed to seed doubt. The gallery buzzed with whispers, and for a moment, the tide felt like it was slipping. But then I glanced at the laptop on our desk, Malik's folder of videos still waiting, and the thick binder of receipts stacked beside it. This wasn't the end. This was the storm before the clearing. I straightened my shoulders, breathing deep. Malik had armed me for this moment. And today, I intended to make sure his truth roared louder than all their lies combined. When the brothers finished parading their witnesses, the air in the courtroom felt heavy, tilting against me. Then Mr. Green rose, calm as stone. Your Honor, the plaintiffs paint Malik as incompetent, but the truth speaks for itself. He gestured toward me. My hands shook as I carried the silver laptop to the clerk. On the screen was a hidden folder Malik had named The Endgame. I'd never seen it before. The video opened with Malik, thin but sharp-eyed, his voice steady. If this plays, it means my brothers have done what I always knew they would. Let me be clear. I was of sound mind when I bought Bayou Crescent, and if they deny it, show the world what they tried to bury. Then came documents he had uploaded himself, scanned receipts, contracts, bank transfers. One by one, the files exposed shell companies, fraudulent signatures, and money trails leading straight back to Darius, Elias, and Caleb. Gasps rippled across the gallery. The brothers' lawyer stammered, rifling through his papers, while Darius muttered curses under his breath. Elias's face went pale, and Caleb wouldn't even lift his eyes. Green's voice cut through the silence. Your Honor, this is not the work of a confused man. It is the foresight of a husband and father protecting his family. I felt Amara squeeze my hand, her grip steady, certain. Malik had left more than words. He had left armor. And for the first time in that courtroom, the brothers looked like men cornered by their own shadows. When Mr. Green called Claudine to the stand, the room shifted. She moved with the calm strength of someone who had carried truth too long to be shaken now. After swearing in, she fixed her eyes on the judge, her voice steady. I knew Malik Monroe for over 30 years, she began. He wasn't confused, and he wasn't manipulated. He was deliberate. He asked me to keep records of every step he took with Bayou Crescent, because he knew this day would come. She reached into her bag and pulled out a leather journal and a worn cassette tape. The clerk set the tape to play. Malik's voice filled the courtroom, scratchy but strong. Claudine, if my brothers ever try to undo what I've built, let this speak for me. I was of sound mind. They, not me, are the ones drowning in lies and fraud. The room fell silent. Even the judge leaned forward, listening intently. Claudine held the journal high. Dates, signatures, conversations, all here. Proof of his clarity, proof of their corruption. Malik wasn't just thinking of this estate. He was protecting his wife and daughter from the very men who sit at that table. I looked across the room. Darius's face flushed red. Elias's smirk collapsed, and Caleb couldn't even raise his head. For the first time since Malik's death, The truth didn't feel like a fragile secret I was guarding. It stood tall, unshakable, right there in the open. And in that moment, I knew we had already won. Judge Reynolds sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. The weight of every word spoken, every document shown, hung in the air like storm clouds about to break. Finally, he lifted his gaze. This court has reviewed extensive testimony and evidence. The plaintiff sought to prove incompetence. Instead, the defense has shown foresight, clarity, and deliberate intent from Mr. Malak Monroe himself. Bayou Crescent Estate is, and will remain, the rightful property of his widow, Mrs. Zariah Monroe. The gavel came down hard, once, final. I closed my eyes, my hand clutching Amara's. Relief surged through me like breath after drowning. Across the room, my brothers-in-law sat deflated, stripped of their arrogance, their legacy of lies finally exposed. But this victory wasn't just about land. It was about voice. The voice Malak left behind, the voice I found within myself, and the voice of truth that no courtroom trick could silence. Looking back, I realize this story isn't only mine. It's about what we choose to protect when everything is on the line. Love, memory, legacy. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't wealth, but the courage to defend what matters most. So let me ask you, if you were in my place, would you have had the strength to fight for the truth, even when the odds were stacked against you? If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about family, love, and the battles we inherit, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your voice keeps these stories alive, and together we remind the world that truth always finds a way to be heard.